Thank you to GameWork Create for being a channel partner. Looking for a Kickstarter game you missed or 3D printed minis? GameWork Create has a huge selection available, all at a fair price. Use the link in the description below to check out all that GameWork Create has to offer. What's up, Rockstars? Today I'm going to be talking about how I am incredibly biased. Before we get into the video, I'd like to thank my sponsor, you guys. Thank you so much to my patrons and YouTube members. It is through their financial support that this channel is possible. If you'd like to give it even $1 a month, I greatly appreciate it. There is a link down below. Thank you so much. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in. So, I'm biased, and I'm not afraid to admit it. You're biased too. It's okay. It's called being human. There are bad biases, and there's a lot of talk about bad bias, and people just say bias, and at this point mean bad. But I'm biased towards loving my children. I'm biased towards all sorts of things. And that's okay too. It is important, I think, to know your bias. Good or bad, right? To understand it. And then if it's bad, maybe work on it. If it's good, maybe embrace it or be okay with it and come to terms with it or whatever it might be. But I have bias. There is no such thing as an unbiased review. If a reviewer is telling you that they're unbiased, they are a liar because they are human. Bias is everywhere and you can't fight it. Bias is the myth we all pretend is real, right? That's the name of this video, and that's for a reason, because it's just pretend. It's just some hypothetical thing you talk about. Unbiased. Are you unbiased? No, nobody is unbiased. Nothing is unbiased. So let me try and explain that. Your word choice, your inflections, your decisions are all signs of your bias. For instance, did you kill someone or did you murder them? Well, I mean, the action's the same, but the word choice you use reflects your bias towards that situation, that comment, that sentence that you just said. Whether it's perhaps something like saying, a gameplay, I've said this before because it's just a good example because it shows both. I could say the gameplay is weak or the gameplay is light. Now that can be the same thing, but it also infers something else, some internal thoughts, some internal bias that I might have. Weak shows that there's a disappointment to it, whereas light just is trying to state that it's, lighter, right? But there's no expectation for more, whereas weak infers that. If you always talk about the minis first, or you spend more time on the minis or something like that, well, you're probably a little bit biased towards the miniatures. As a reviewer, as somebody who has opinions, which is what anybody who's critiquing anything should have, opinions are based on bias. I love drafting. I've loved it ever since Magic the Gathering, which was a game I've played for a very long time, ever since I was a teenager. I love drafting. So if a game has drafting in it, I tend to like it because I'm biased toward drafting. I love skirmish games. I like dungeon crawlers. I like area control. I like that kind of game, boss battlers, right? Those are kind of the genres I like. So guess what? I'm inclined to like that. I'm biased to like that. Whereas I am biased against stuff like farming games. I find the whole subject boring to me. So if your game involves farming, well, I'm biased against it. And that's okay. I don't have to pretend to be unbiased towards it. That doesn't give anybody anything. I think every reviewer should own their bias, should be proud of their bias, and let it known what their bias is. I talk often, I didn't do it in this on purpose, but in a lot of my intros I talk about how when you hear my opinion, it's my honest opinion, not my wallet's opinion. What I mean by that is I show you what I think and embrace the bias and let you guys know about it. You guys know what I'm up with. When you see these games, you can see what my bias leans towards, what my likes are, what my dislikes are. You can get a sense of that just based off of looking at the background of each and every one of my videos. So this idea of trying to be less biased makes no sense to me. It means a lot more that you guys, I feel, can understand the kinds of things I like. So when I say I liked this, if you know where I stand and you know where you align with that, you can then make a great decision on that. But if I try to fight that bias, if I try to not have that personalization, that personality in me, well, I hate farming games, but even though I hated my time with this mechanic was good and this mechanic was good and I needed, no, if I had a terrible time, I want to say I had a terrible time. I can then say that mechanic was good, but it didn't matter because I hated it, and you guys know what that bias is. Whereas if I'm constantly trying to depersonify my opinions and trying to somehow have opinions while also not having opinions. It literally makes no sense to me. Even the inflection of your voice matters. What word do you enunciate more? What word do you weigh on more? Where does your voice rise and where does it lower? What is the structure of that sentence? Everything is bias. We are, after all, just people, and we all have our own opinions, and that's fine too. But recently there's been talk about, bias this and bias that, and I really just don't, I guess, understand it. And I think we should probably knock it off. Especially if anybody's claiming to be unbiased, or if somebody is wanting somebody to be unbiased, because there's no such thing. There was recently a kind of a joke video where the only thing he could say that was unbiased was that it's a game. But even that can be biased. For instance, I feel Ether Fields is barely a game. So you saying that it is a game means that you're probably a little bit biased towards the small amount of card gameplay that's in that game. Or maybe you're biased towards the art. Either way, there's something of your bias going in there calling that a game. You can't just call all these a game. Some of them, I feel, are an experience, right? You don't have a game. I experienced this. Then, that's a legitimate viewpoint. But either way, no matter what you say, it's bias. In fact, if that's all you're saying, what you're not saying is showing some bias. What did you not mention? What did you mention? If you're listing components and you list the miniatures before the tokens, is that because you tend to like miniatures more? If you always tend to show the components and you just happen to always tend to grab a miniature, is it because you're more into miniatures than that? I don't know. Maybe you're biased towards liking the miniatures and you think they're cool and you want to show them off before you show off the cards. What is your bias? Just know what that is and wear it on your sleeve. I think it's good for everyone if reviewers have their bias and have their bias be obvious and consistent. That's why I talk about my opinions, not my wallet's opinions, because my wallet's opinions could change based off who's paying me, whereas my opinions only change naturally through the course of my life. And it's a little bit more slow and steady and a little bit more common ground, so you kind of know where I'm coming from on things. So you guys know me. You guys know what I'm all about, what I like, what I don't like, why I don't like what I don't like, and why I like what I do like. And I think that's great for you guys. It means that when I review something, you know exactly where I'm coming from and you know where you stand according to that. So do not expect anything but a ton of bias in all of my reviews. And I'm not ashamed to say that at all. And in fact, let's also stop trying to seek stuff that's not biased. Because that just kind of robs all the personality out of all of us now, doesn't it? Now, again, bad bias is bad bias, and there's some detrimental bias, and that's, I'm talking about board game reviews here, so let's calm down around there. I'm just talking about doing reviews on some board games. Alright guys, thanks so much for hearing me out. Let me know what you think about this. I would love to hear and discuss with you. You guys know how I roll. I'll be down in the comments. So yeah, let's discuss it. What do you think about bias in board game reviews, and do you think there's anything like as somebody that's unbiased? If so, I'd love to see an example of that robot. All right, take care, guys. Bye.